Hey friends, Sleepy here and welcome to a brand new video. Today I'm going to actually talk with you guys about how I built my game collection. This is a question I have received numerous times over the years, especially in the last 3 or 4 years since I've been able to display more of my game collection, especially in these videos people see behind me. I've had a lot of questions about how I got the collection and how much it costs, that kind of thing. People thinking, oh, this dude must be rich, he's got a giant collection, which is the first thing from the truth. But I thought I would make this video and release it because I had a buddy, my buddy Dean, actually talked about how he built his collection. I had a few other people in the last couple of years actually make videos about how they built their collection, and I figured it was finally time for me to sit down, make a video, and share with you guys how I built my collection, just so I can answer some of the questions that people have been asking me over the past several years about how I built my collection. And it's just a really fun video that I wanted to do for you guys and just share with you guys how I was able to build up my collection. Now, when I first started my channel 10 years ago, my collection was nowhere near what it is today. I mean, it was still massive and larger than what most people would have for their collection, especially 10 years ago when people didn't really care about retro collecting. And my collection, though, has really grown since that very first pickups video that I released on my channel, which is one of my first videos ever. Actually, I think it was my absolute first video. It was a pickups video when I first started on YouTube. And since that day, I've had 184 pickup videos on my channel in 10 years. So I have picked up a lot of stuff. So I wanted to just share with you guys how I built my collection and share with you guys a little bit of my goals and why I was collecting and everything. Now, it all starts out when I was 4 years old, 1989 and 1990, right around there, 4 and 5 years old. My aunt cousin, she used to babysit me sometimes, and my younger brother when my parents were working, and especially like in the summertime and stuff. And my cousin, she also watched her younger sisters that were around my age, a little younger, and she lived with her boyfriend. We lived in the same apartment complex, which is really cool. And so we would go over there and she would watch us. And I remember that her boyfriend at the time had a regular Nintendo, and he had Mario Brothers, the original Mario Brothers, and the Duck Hunt game. And my first ever experience was with Mario and Duck Hunt and playing those games. And we used to fight over the green Mario and the red Mario, because his name was obviously Luigi. But at the time, I didn't know that, and we just called it the green Mario. Nobody wanted to be player two; they wanted to be player one. So we used to fight over it. But it just absolutely blew my young mind playing Mario Brothers on the NES. And then I remember, we just would go over there all the time and play it. I just absolutely was just mesmerized by this is so awesome, being able to control a little thing on the TV. And when you're just 4 and 5 years old, you don't have the best eye-hand coordination in the world, but it was just fun to play, and we loved that game. And that's actually what made me fall in love with gaming, was Mario and Mario Brothers on the NES. Absolutely loved it. And then eventually, my parents did buy us our own NES and a couple games. That Mario was one of them, and absolutely loved it. And my love for gaming just started growing from there. Now, my parents weren't rich. We weren't rich, but, we weren't poor either. But, we were middle class and, did well financially. And we had money for some stuff. Some people, I had friends, parents didn't really have a whole lot of money to buy stuff all the time. Now, of course, my parents weren't buying me games every day or every week, which actually I had a couple of buddies who were parents were really loaded, and they got games all the time. And so I was able to go over there at their house and play games all the time. It was a really fun time. But for me, my gaming started out with the NES, and then it just started growing from there. In the 90s, we lived in Arizona, and one thing that my parents really instilled in me was, you got to work hard for what you want, and you don't always have to buy something brand new or have the best of the best to still enjoy things in life. And one thing that my parents were really big fans of were going to thrift stores and stuff, because they had been doing that way before I was born, and finding unique stuff, like getting clothing and stuff there, especially for us kids. You're not going to buy your kid hundreds of dollars worth of clothes that, kids spill stuff on the shirts and juice and get them ripped and running around in the grass. So my mom would actually get us clothes at the thrift stores because it was cheaper, and we ruined those. Who cares? You ruined a dollar shirt or something, Now, she did buy some nice stuff, at JCPenney's at the time and stores like that. We had nice church clothes and stuff. But for every day running around in the summertime and stuff, not like, including school clothes, but that kind of stuff, we would get those at the thrift store, and we would buy board games and videotapes and toys and even video games at the thrift stores. And my mom's always been a collector. My dad's not too much into collecting stuff. My mom always has, and that's where I got my like collecting bug from. I'd say is from her. Her enjoyment of collecting is what made me enjoy collecting, and that was started with video games. Of course, I had we played toys and collected those, but I really liked video games. And as I was growing up, I would get games at the thrift stores. People were just didn't want them, throw them away at the thrift store, and I was able to get games super cheap. $1, $2. Got NES consoles there for cheap. NES games for 50 cents, a quarter, $1 at the time. Because this is this is the 90s. The NES is out. The Super Nintendo just launched. Like nobody cared about this older stuff. It wasn't like today where everybody loves these old games and they're worth hundreds of dollars. Like at that time, these games weren't worth that much after they weren't new. When they were new though, there were some games were 50, 60, 70, $80. They were expensive, but eventually the prices went down and used game stores started popping up. Funko Lands, GameStop, EB Games, a lot of mom and pop stores were around, and the businesses were thriving on buying and selling games. And that's when I started, building up my collection. Is in the 90s. Now I was into like where I was, a big collecting goal set when I was a child. It was just, buying games I like to play. Sometimes we would trade them in, but I kept a lot of my titles. Especially some of these, like for the Nintendo 64, when I got the Nintendo 64, a lot of those games are expensive. Today, we got those used, and I just kept them. I didn't sell a lot of my games off. It was one thing for me, like different than my friends. Like my friends were, okay, we had NES, cool. Super Nintendo came out. Okay, I'm getting rid of my NES. I'm trading into the game store or selling it to a friend, and I'm buying Super Nintendo. That's all I'm playing. Oh, I can't go back to the old stuff. And then they did the same thing when Nintendo 64 came out. Okay, I'm only playing 64. I don't want to play old Nintendo consoles. Then the PlayStation 1 comes out, Dreamcast kind of, comes out. It was the same thing, oh, I'm done with those old consoles. I don't want to play those old things. I only want the new, what's great now. Who cares about that old stuff? I'm done with it. And they moved on. Me, I still like playing the old stuff, but I also like playing the new stuff at the same time and experiencing the new consoles. I was always excited when the new console was announced. Like Super Nintendo, wow, this thing is so much better than the regular Nintendo, and it's just like how the Sega Genesis is a 16-bit console. This is amazing. And then, wow, the 64 come out. Look at these 3D graphics. It's so awesome. Like, this is crazy. And then PlayStation 1, wow, games on CDs and not cartridges. This is really cool and unique. And then, Dreamcast came out and blew my mind. Like, wow, these graphics are just amazing. And PS2, and, we just keep progressing original Xbox 360 into today's games, So I've always been there with gaming as it's grown from the 8-bit era up. Now, I wasn't, old enough for like the Atari generation, but I did have an Atari that I got in the early 90s at a thrift store, and I still appreciate the games for what they are, and they were fun, like Frogger and the Pac-Man and stuff, and Combat. So there was some games on the Atari I really did enjoy. And my parents liked the Atari because they actually had a friend who had one that they played when they lived in Seattle before I was born, and before they moved back to New York, where actually I was born at. And so my parents liked the Atari too, and my dad liked playing the Frogger on there, and my mom liked playing stuff because my dad was big into playing arcade games in the 80s. Like he loved going to playing Gauntlet. He liked playing Pac-Man. He liked Frogger. He liked playing those old Galaga, all those old classic arcade games, which he still likes playing today. So he loved playing those. And so, they enjoyed going to the bars and playing those stuff and arcade games. And so my dad is also another reason why I fell into love with gaming, because he liked gaming and he, played games with us. Now he doesn't really play games except arcade games when we go to the arcade. But, he did love playing those old classic games. And so he helped build my love for it as well. But yeah, so it's like when I was a kid, I liked playing the old stuff even though the new stuff came out. I had friends, like I had mentioned, they only wanted the newer stuff. And so sometimes, some buddies, I remember I got his old NES and a bunch of games for $50. I got an allowance every week. My brother and I each got $5 a week, and then it became $10 a week. We had to do chores, help my mom do laundry, clean our room, vacuuming, putting the dishes away, helping my mom do grocery shopping, help my dad do stuff. And so we got an allowance, and we would save up our money and buy games. And sometimes I would save my money up and actually buy games for my buddies because they would sell that to me, so they could go to the game store and buy the new console, the new game that's out. Like, the new game's out for $50. Here, I'll sell you these 10 old Nintendo games for that $50. It's like I was planning to get the new game too, or I could get these 10 old games and have 10 more games for my collection to play. Okay, cool. I'll buy your 10 old games. I'll get that new game, later on at Funcoland, which was one of my favorite stores. I love Funcoland. If you get, younger people probably had never got to experience Funcoland, but those stores were awesome. They're what before the GameStop took over them. It was awesome. You would go in there and they had TVs set up. A lot of them were in malls and stuff, and you could actually test out games before you buy them. The guys would open it up and put a new game in there and let you try it out, and then you could decide to buy it. They also had a little newspaper that they released. I don't know if it was weekly or monthly, and it had all the prices that they were paying and what it cost to buy them. And it was really cool to see that you could go through the different categories. I wish I had one of those old papers now. That would be really cool to just like frame and put up in the game room. That would be cool. But yeah, Funcoland was one way I built up my collection as a child, buying stuff. And I just kept a lot of my games like Mario 64, the Mario Parts. Some of these really, really expensive games today, they're $100 or more, or $80, I just kept them and never sold them, and that's how I have some of these really expensive games in my collection. And then another way, I built up my collection, though, big thing was thrift stores, especially after 2000, like starting 2002, 2003, when I was in high school, in 2004, when I graduated high school and moved out, is when I really started ramping up collecting more and more stuff. Because at that time, nobody cared about retro collecting. It wasn't popular like it is today. There was no big YouTube or any thing. People weren't making collection videos and videos talking about these old games. It was just really, everyone just cared about the newest stuff. I want the Xbox, then I want the Xbox 360. That's what they cared about, the newest stuff. Nobody cared about old retro games. And so I was able to buy a lot of stuff cheap at game stores and at thrift stores, because this is the time Goodwill didn't know anything about video games. They weren't like, oh, this is the hottest thing. They didn't look up prices. And I would buy stuff, get games there all the time. Just tons of stuff. I picked up a lot of consoles. I've bought over 100 Nintendo 64 consoles from Goodwills over the years. And I saved them up. And I actually would sell them. I'd buy them for like $5 complete and sell them for like $30, $40. And I actually stockpiled quite a bit of these as I started seeing that gaming was becoming more popular, and I knew that I could turn around, sell these for more than I paid for them, and use that to help fund my collection. Which is one thing I did was, buying extras of stuff that were cheap and then reselling that to buy games I wanted, or even to take them and trade them into a game store and get more money than I paid. I pick up a stack of Nintendo games for $1 each at the Goodwill, and then take them to the game store and get like $40 or more for them, and then use that money to buy a game that I wanted for another console. So that was one way I did it. I also would pick up stuff and would trade with other people, pick up doubles and would trade with people, especially once I started getting into YouTube. So 2012 time, that's when collecting started taking off a little bit, and people were more and more into the collecting aspect, and people were sharing their collections, and I was checking out YouTube. And I actually originally created my channel just so I could save the different channels that I was sub to, and to keep track of their videos, because these people were really cool, and I liked watching these old game hunting videos, low production quality. It was just YouTube. It was the you part of YouTube, you making videos, the average everyday guy, not some guy making this as a living or, a profession. It was just an average Joe guy just sharing his love for gaming. And it was cool finding people who shared my passion for gaming and my love for it, and I loved their videos. And I was watching all these game hunting videos. The dudes were going out to the Goodwills and the thrift stores and yard sales, and they're finding all this really cool stuff. And I'm like, man, I should do more and more of that kind of stuff, go out more and hunting. And so I started hitting up more Goodwills, and like I said, I was finding a lot of awesome stuff, and I found some really rare games for my collection for cheap over the past 20 years at thrift stores. And some of my most expensive games I've paid practically nothing for, because I found them at thrift stores. Like I remember one time at a Goodwill, this was I think 2011 or 12, one Goodwill I went down was like a gold mine that day. They had Pokemon Red, Pokemon Yellow, Pokemon Silver, They had Mario Advance, Mario Brothers 3, Mario Brothers, Super Mario World ones on Game Boy Advance. They had a bunch of the Zelda titles, Zelda Link's Awakening, and some other Pokemon titles and stuff. And they were all priced at like $4, and I had a 20% off coupon. I was able to buy all those. Like today, if that same store had those, all of those would end up on shopgoodwill.com and would be going for a ton of money, $20 a title or some crazy amount that they do. But at that time, Goodwill didn't look it up, and I was able to get all those games for super cheap. I remember I got a copy, I was disc only, of Tomba for the PlayStation 1 for $2, which I eventually printed a case for it. Actually, it was Tomba 2, not Tomba 1. One of those games that's really expensive these days, which I would love to get complete, but I'm not paying $80 or $100 for it. So eventually, if I find, I would love to find a cheap copy at a thrift store, at a game store that just didn't have it priced right, and it's something I would really love to find. But I was finding stuff like that at thrift stores because nobody cared about them, so people just dumped them. Oh, this is an old game. This is my son. He went to college, whatever, and just dump it off. And so that's how I built up a lot of games thanks to the thrift stores and getting consoles and stuff cheap there. I also went to a lot of yard sales and garage sales, and people were just practically giving stuff away. Like I mentioned, like somebody's, and it's happened to other people, somebody's went to college and their mom is like, well, this is just garbage here. It's like kids' old gaming crap. I want to get $20 for the whole box, and you would get lots and stuff like that. And I was able to take the stuff I wanted for it, and then I could sell to the game stores or to other people the stuff I didn't want. And so I was able to build up my collection through yard sales and thrift stores and that. I also liked going to flea markets. Now, when I lived out in California and Arizona, they call them swap meets there, which is the same thing, a bunch of vendors, people set up tables and just sell their stuff. And I would find great deals on stuff there. My parents loved going to them. They also sparked my love for flea markets and swap meets by going to those. I remember we used to go every Saturday and Sunday to the swap meet, and I used to get toys and games there and stuff. That was really fun. So that was another way I built up my collection. And then here where I live now, there's a chain of game stores here that I've been going to since 2000. So I've been going there for 20 years, and they have also helped me build up my collection, especially my original Xbox collection, which I own a complete North American original Xbox collection, which is just insane. It's like 863 games, and I have a ton of variants. I have over 1,200 with import titles and variants for the original Xbox. But the game stores here locally have helped me out a lot, because the one time I bought over 100 titles, and the dude gave me a whole bunch for free. It was basically like $1 a title, because at the time the original Xbox wasn't that popular, like 5-6 years ago, collecting like it is now. Like, it's really exploded, and some of these games I was getting for $1 or $2 are like $8, $20, $30, $50. Like, especially like Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. I remember getting that on the Xbox One for $5 in a bargain bin. I also own it for the PC, and I also have it on PlayStation 2. But that's one game that's gotten expensive. Another one is Outrun. Let me see. It's Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast. It's become really expensive. I got that for $5 at the game store. It was just a used racing game. I didn't have it. Picked it up. Hey, this is pretty cool. Same thing with IHRA Sportsman Edition. I got that for like $5 at the game store. That's been going for like $40-50. Stubbs the Zombies, expensive. There's some titles for the original Xbox that are really expensive now, but I got them when they were cheap and nobody cared about them. And it's not like today where people are actively searching for them. And I was able to build up that collection thanks to that. Like, if I was just starting today, man, it would be really difficult because the prices are so high, and you're just not going to find the deals that I used to find. I was able to build up my collection because I was able to get stuff when people didn't care about it. And so one tip I would definitely say, though, is, collect a generation before or right before that is a good way. Like right now, getting Xbox 360 and PS3 games are good, as we're approaching the new 9th generation with the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. So the GameStops and their game stores and stuff are going to start phasing out PS3, Wii, 360 titles, and now's a great time to get some of these cheap. Now, of course, there's some of them that are pretty pricey as people really want them, but it's a great time to get those. It's also still a good time to get some PS2, PSP, original Xbox titles. Even though the original Xbox is becoming more popular, it's still a pretty affordable console to collect for, minus the handful of really expensive titles. You can still get your Halos for $5-6. You can get your other racing games. You can get your Lord of the Rings. You can get LA Rush. You can get the Project Gotham racing games fairly cheap because they're still cheap titles and they were produced in mass quantities. But definitely would say, try, going a couple generations back, collecting stuff and getting sales and stuff, and, taking the time, pick up games and build up stuff you really want. So that was, that's one way, like how I was able to build up my collection was thanks to game stores, thrift stores, and flea markets and stuff. And then, like I said, buying games doubles for cheap and then reselling them and using that to fund my collection. Because, I bought a lot of games uh, with the funds from selling other games. Like I got my really expensive, it was $350 for Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut cartridge only, and I opened it and tested to make sure it was authentic on eBay. It only cost me in like $30 in stuff I bought. I sold a Nintendo 64 that I had bought years ago for $5. Sold it for $80. It was on Craigslist to some dude with a couple games, and I had like $30 invested, and I got my $350 basically from selling those stack of games. It was only cost me about $30 years ago, and I still have a nice little stockpile. Don't have a whole lot left of Nintendo 64 consoles, but I had a bunch of those. I also had a whole bunch of PlayStation 2s. That was another thing I found a lot of, and I sold those. I actually had a guy that I become friends with here locally, because I would sell him PS2s I would find for like $40, and I was getting for like $5 and $10. So it was, quadrupling my money on finding all the time. And then I kept some for myself, so I had backups and stuff. But that's, how I was able to build up my collection. Because, anytime people see a massive collection like this, I automatically just think, oh, that dude's got to be rich. He just has hundreds of thousands of dollars and just buys games like crazy and spends all this money. And anyone who has a big collection like mine is going to tell you that that's farthest thing from the truth. I am not rich by any means. This was a lot of hard work, dedication, and just years and years of collecting. I did not build my collection overnight. Now, there are people I have seen who are like, I only collected 2 years and I got 5,000 games, and they went crazy spending money recently. And, that's definitely not the way to collecting. I would not recommend, just spending tons of money, buying up tons of games and stuff. If you were able to get it cheap like I was, that was the way to build your collection, was buying stuff cheap and then selling off stuff you didn't want to buy games that you did want for your collection. And that's how I built up my collection. A bulk of my collection came from thrift stores, yard sales, from friends, from game stores and stuff. I did get stuff on eBay, obviously, but for the most part, I was getting everything much cheaper than retail price. Now, I did pay retail from stuff. Of course, when brand new games came out that I had to have collector's editions, stuff like that, I would pre-order games every year. But mostly I bought my games used. I didn't always buy everything brand new. I used to buy mostly used games, and I still have that mentality for stuff, as I like to get games cheaper. I'm not going to buy 100 games at $50 a pop when I could get 100 games down the road at $2-3 a pop and get a lot more games for your, more bang for your buck. So that's one way, like how, I was able to build my collection, was thanks to cheap prices and when people didn't care about it. So like I said, in the past, it was much easier to collect than it is today. Today, it's just really hard to collect, especially some of the more popular titles. It is so popular. People know it's popular, and the prices are just at an all-time high. Now, I do see prices eventually going down as people are starting to move away from the retro collecting, as they're getting more into the modern stuff, and like the Nintendo Switch is an example. And the younger generations didn't grow up with the stuff that I grew up with, so they're not as interested. They're not going to care. Like my son's not going to really care in his generation about Nintendo. They're growing up with the PS3, 360, Xbox Ones, and Nintendo Switch and stuff. And so those are the games that they're going to really care about. And so that older stuff, as our generations, the older generations are growing older and older, people are losing interest. They're moving away from the hobby. I've seen a lot of people are downsizing their collections or completely leaving the hobby. So because of that, you'll eventually see prices dropping. Now, they're not going to stay collectible and valuable forever. Eventually everyone's going to die off that cared about this stuff. 50 years from now, I don't know if anyone's going to care about an 80 or 90-year-old Nintendo console, even if it freaking still working like that long. They are built pretty well, but, they just won't stay popular forever. Now, I never had been building my collection for monetary value. I didn't buy this, just hoping one day that I'm going to become a millionaire from, because I have seen people come and go over the years, especially on YouTube, that were just buying stuff up just in the hopes that it was going to become rich. These get rich quick schemes is basically what it is, and investing their money like that this is going to be a great investment. Like if you're going to invest your money, invest it in like the stock market and actually have real money, or your 401k. Don't invest in video games. Like you're not going to buy this stuff and turn around and sell it and become rich. That's just not going to happen, because you have to have somebody that's willing to buy it, because nothing is worth anything unless someone's willing to buy it. And there is that saying, nothing's worth anything until you actually sell it. So you have to have a buyer. If you don't have any buyers for this stuff, how are you going to sell it and make money off of it? So if you're in this for the monetary value only and hoping to get rich on it, that's just the wrong way to do it. And take your money and invest it in something else. Trust me, you'll save yourself a lot of heartache and lost money and revenue, and then just stuck with junk that's just going to clutter you up in your life. But me, I have loved video games ever since I played that Mario Brothers on the NES, and I just love collecting, and I like collecting all kinds of games. There are a few consoles I want to go for full sets, like I did for the original Xbox, which is just absolutely insane. That I have a complete North American set for the original Xbox. So every game released here in North America, I have on the Xbox. I can play any of those games. That's my collection. I am working on completing my Nintendo 64 collection. I only have 2 more titles to get, and I'll have that full 296 Nintendo 64 game collection for North America. I also have some Japanese ones, so I actually have like 320 titles for the Nintendo 64. I just got to get those 2 remaining expensive ones, Worms Armageddon and the Super Bowling, which I wish I had got those 5 years ago when they weren't so crazy expensive as they are now. But my buddy at the game store said, though, that he'd work out a deal with me when those come into their location, because I actually do have a few, and he said he'd be willing to work with me on the price. And I do have some extra stuff. He said I could trade in, give me a little bit extra money for it. So I do plan to get those 2 to complete my Nintendo 64 collection. Another one I would love to have a full set is the Wii U, and then I had been working on wanting to go for a complete Sega Genesis collection, North American, but I don't know if I'll ever do that. But, I just have loved collecting, on different games and stuff. And so for the way I collect, I definitely would not recommend it. It's definitely not for everybody. I would suggest, especially if you're new into getting collecting, only buy and collect the games that you guys truly love and want to actually play. Don't buy a whole collection of games that you're not going to ever play and you're just going to sit around and collect this. Just start out collecting the games you love for a couple different consoles. There's a lot of great ones out there. You could get this Nintendo, Super Nintendo, the GameCube. You could get a couple different consoles and then get a few of the best games for those and try them out and beat them. And then as you, play them, you could always trade them in, or like I do, like to keep them. And then just buy other games that interest you, and try out games. You could use GameFly and rent games. That's what I did. I tried out a lot of games renting through the years. Obviously, we don't really have that many rental stores anymore. There's like one Blockbuster, I think, in Washington State left. There are a chain of video stores here called Family Video that still rent video games. And that was another way that I experienced a lot of games over the years, was renting games and trying them out. So if you guys were, get into collecting now, I would definitely suggest just stick to getting the games you really want to play, and don't have to buy them new, buy them used. And if you're not really into collecting and caring about them being complete, you can get a lot of disc-only games and cartridge games really, really cheap if you just want to play the games. Of course, you can go the emulation route if you want to have a modded Wii, or get one of those EverDrive carts for different consoles and have all the ROMs. But of course, that's technically an illegal gray area, not actually owning the cartridge. You're playing ROMs that are, it's actually pirated software and stuff. So everybody has their own opinions on emulation. I think it has its place and stuff, and some people are completely against it. And I'd rather have the actual physical copies than just digital copies. And so for me, I just love collecting. I love collecting like the collectibles, magazines. I love old gaming magazines, reading through those. I have a big collection of those. Those are awesome. Posters and collector's editions, pre-order bonuses, little t-shirts, clothing. There's all kinds of stuff that I like with my game collection. And I just like collecting because it's fun and it brings me joy. It's a hobby. For me, it's a hobby. This is not a business. YouTube is also just for fun. I don't buy these games as a business investment or anything like that. I only collect it because it's fun for me and I love having it. And I don't collect for other people too. That's the other thing that I had saw over the years on YouTube is people were literally buying stuff for the sake of making a video. Oh, I'm gonna make pickup videos, those are popular, so I'm just gonna buy stuff to show people, or I'm gonna go out game hunting and make videos. Didn't even really care about wanting to buy this stuff, but they were just really buying it to make videos and stuff, and just for others and to show off and stuff. Like for me, I don't have a collection just to show off to people and say, hey, look at me, my collection's cool because I have a ton of games. That doesn't make me cool at all. Just I have a big collection. Whoop-de-doo, the guy has a collection now. I have my YouTube channel, and I like sharing my collection with other people who love game collecting as much as I do, and interacting and meeting people who like stuff. So that's why I like sharing my collection. Is not for bragging or saying I'm better than anyone else. It's simply for me just to share my love and passion for gaming with others who share my same passion. And I love seeing other people's collections, and I like seeing their game room tours and how they have stuff set up. And it's just really cool to interact with people who love the same stuff that I do. And so that's what I love. And like I said, that gives you guys a little bit of how I built my collection. Like I said, I didn't buy this stuff overnight. This was years and years of searching and buying stuff, and like actively, like heavily collecting. Like the last 15 years I've been really putting in, especially the last 10, I've been putting a lot of effort into my collection, and waiting and being patient. That's another thing, not jumping the gun and buying stuff just because I could get it. I did wait and take my time and get deals on stuff. And then there was sometimes, where there were certain deals that were really good, and I just said, hey, this is one of those lifetime deal you're gonna find. You gotta buy it, and I took it and bought the game. I've been experiencing gaming since the NES days, and so I've been growing up with gaming and the innovations and how we have transitioned from those old graphics to we have the modern graphics today. And I have loved moving through the different gaming generations, and I have absolutely loved my collection. It is awesome, and I have a huge gamer and huge collector, and I just love collecting games. And for right now, I'm going to continue building up my collection. Who knows in the future, I might want to sell off my collection down the road and downsize. Who knows? We never know what the future holds for us. But for right now, my plans are just to keep collecting games that I love doing and building up my wonderful collection. I can't wait to the day that my wife and I are going to get a house. We just have to decide where we want to actually live and put down roots. Because once you start, by getting a house, you're kind of stuck to that area, and it's not easy just to sell off homes, especially depending on how the economy can fluctuate and everything. So once I do get a house, I plan to build a dedicated gaming room, whether it's in a basement or an attic or a spare room, or who knows, maybe if we have some property, I might build outdoor space, a building outside in the backyard or something for my collection. But it's something I would love to have, a dedicated game room, because I have here in my living room, my wife is really appreciative and supportive of me taking over a good portion of our living room for my game collection, because I have a lot more games I have in storage that I can't get out. If I did, it would take over the entire living room, and it would just have games everywhere. So I would like to get a dedicated game room in the future once my wife and I are able to buy our house and not living in an apartment. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. But that's basically how I was able to build my collection over the years. I got stuff cheap. I got it when people yard sales. I bought stuff from friends. I bought stuff to sell, to trade into game stores, and I was able to get my collection for much cheaper than what people have to pay these days. If I had just started out now, I would have to just stay solely focused on games I only wanted to play and not branch out into other games and stuff that I had no idea about, just because of how much it would cost today. And there's no way in hell I would have the collection I do now if I had just started within the last year or two. It just would not have happened. I was able to get my collection years ago because of prices and when people didn't care about it. And that's how I was able to build up my collection, was those many different factors. So I hope that answers your guys' questions for you, about how I built my collection. Like I said, I saw my buddy Dean and a few others do videos like this, and I have gotten questions so much over the years, and reading comments of people seeing my collection thinking, oh, it must just be some rich guy and stuff. And so I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit about how I got my game collection, how I built it up, and why I like collecting and stuff. So I would love to hear about how you guys built your collection. If you guys have a video like Dean had up on his, please leave me a link to the video in the comments, and I'll definitely check it out. Love interacting with you guys. You guys are awesome. Love all the support you guys have shown my channel over the years. Love watching your guys' videos. And I actually have enjoyed playing some games with you. So if you guys do want to play games with me, I have my Nintendo Switch friend code. The 3DS code I think is the same. It's in the description. I have my gamer tags that I play on Xbox, PlayStation consoles in the description. So if you want, send me a friend request. Just let me know who you are, and then we can become friends on there, and maybe we can play some games together. Want to thank you guys for watching. Take care. Have an amazing day, and Sleepy will see you guys next time.